This is Part 2, Episode 45. Meng Hongchen displayed astonishing agility as she arrived on the competition stage's edge with 2 flips before she abruptly leapt to the side. The thunderous dragon head was able to lock onto its target. However, instead of chasing after her, it proceeded to crash into the protective barrier surrounding the competition stage with a loud boom. Innumerable streaks of lightning erupted when it struck the protective barrier, causing a sphere of lightning that was over 3 meters in diameter to appear. Several seconds passed before it gradually dissipated. Meng Hongchen didn't move an inch as she dropped back onto the ground. She didn't take the initiative to launch another attack, nor did she do anything else. She just watched Bei Bei on the other end of the stage. Bei Bei just stood there, his gaze a little lackadaisical. There was a trace of disbelief in his eyes, but the twinkling glow in his eyes was dwindling with tremendous speed. Boom! Bei Bei's body collapsed backwards onto the competition stage just like that. He didn't move an inch after the initial bounce when his body first crashed onto the stage. The audience looked on with bewilderment, while everybody from Team Shrek stood up in unison, their expressions that of intense disbelief. How could this be? It was clearly Bei Bei's thunderous dragon head that had broken through his opponent's attack. How could he just crumple onto the ground, unconscious, when he hadn't even touched his opponent? What exactly had happened? Even the Heaven Fiend Doluor looked a little dazed, as not even he knew the reason why Bei Bei had fainted on the spot. There was no reason for him to collapse, no matter which perspective he looked at it from. However, the truth was that he'd gone down, which meant that the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy was victorious this round. The Heaven Fiend Doluor used a strand of gentle soul energy to carry Bei Bei's unconscious body towards Shrek Academy's team members. Hui Yuhao hurriedly came forward and grabbed his senior brother, and realized that Bei Bei's face was extremely pale. All it took was that tiny moment before his breathing became extremely weak. It felt as if his vitality had been frozen, but the more frightening fact was that Bei Bei's skin color had become as white as Meng Hongchen's skin, except that he didn't have her crystal-like translucence. Meng Hongchen gradually stepped into the stage center, then she glanced at the other team members from Shrek with a pair of chilly eyes. She raised her right hand and pointed at the troop in the waiting area and coldly said, "Next." Ling Luo Chen slowly straightened her back. The third contestant from Shrek Academy's team was her. Suddenly, Wang Yang and Hui Yuhao exclaimed at practically the same time, "I know what her martial soul is. I finally remember." The first sentence belonged to Hui Yuhao's, while the latter was Wang Yang's. Hui Yuhao's judgment came from the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion, who'd just been abruptly shaken awake inside his mind, while Wang Yang's determination came from his accrued knowledge from reading a myriad of materials. Hui Yuhao and Wang Yang exchanged a look, then shouted at the same time. Her martial soul is the Vermilion Ice Toad. It's extremely poisonous. The Ice Empress was in a deep slumber inside his spiritual sea, but she'd been awakened the moment Hui Yuhao caught Bei Bei, and had said the Vermilion Ice Toad's name. Bei Bei hadn't let Michael unleash his full potential, and he ended up with the same fate. The Golden Holy Dragon's radiance would no longer shine in this season's grand competition. Hui Yuhao and Wang Yang's unified exclamation was so loud that even Meng Hongchen heard it from the competition stage. She glanced towards Shrek Academy's waiting area, then grunted and said, "You guys are from Shrek after all. Looks like you do know some things." The competition carried on, as the single elimination rounds couldn't be stopped halfway. Hui Yuhao and Wang Yang's words were clearly meant to remind Ling Luo Chen, as she stepped onto the competition stage. However, both of their faces were full of worry and anxiety. The rain was becoming even finer. There was no doubt that Ling Luochen's ice-type control abilities would receive a great boost under such a deluge. However, wouldn't the downpour also create many perfect avenues for poison to spread? Someone with Bei Bei's cultivation, and with the blue lightning tyrant dragon's natural resistance, had lost the ability to battle in just a few gasps of breath. One could only imagine how intense the Vermilion Ice Toad's poison was, and Meng Hongchen was already a Class 5 soul engineer. Ling Luo Chen walked on stage with a calm look in her eyes and stood before the judge. Shrek still had the advantage in the single elimination round for now, as she was the third contestant, while Meng Hongchen was the fourth. The light drizzle continued as both parties gradually retreated to their respective corners. Meng Hongchen's expression at this moment was like an arrogant and aloof peacock. Ling Luo Chen moved back to the edge, as she breathed out lightly. The raindrops around her body drifted away, and couldn't touch her body at all. Begin. Ling Luo Chen immediately made an extremely magnificent and gorgeous move. She released her martial soul, her soul rings naturally appearing as well. The moment they came into view, all 5 of her soul rings started to sparkle alternately. Ling Luochen had actually used all 5 soul skills one after another within a span of 3 breaths. Everybody could see that all 5 circles of light were flickering alternately, from her first 100-year soul ring to her last 10,000-year soul ring. This was no longer about simple tactics or tricks, it was more about her personal understanding of ice. Soul Masters couldn't possibly unleash so many soul skills with such dazzling speed under normal circumstances, yet Ling Luochen had managed to do so. She had complete control over ice, and had thus made use of the connection between her soul skills and exploited their relationships. Not only had she unleashed 5 soul skills within such a short period of time, but she'd also managed to reduce their consumption by about 30%. Every single disciple from Shrek Academy that could enter the inner courtyard could be described as both talented and prodigious. Following her 5 soul rings' alternate sparkling, the first thing that appeared in her palm was naturally her ice staff. She raised her ice staff into the air as her soul rings continued to flicker, and a crystal-like ice armor covered her entire body, even her mouth and nose were completely protected. At the same time, an icy prison descended upon Meng Hongchen and trapped her inside. The sprawling ice mist erupted with Ling Luochen at the center, followed by her ice-brilliant halo. The temperature on the competition stage instantly dropped to 50 degrees below zero, the ice mist's extreme coldness permeating and wreaking havoc within the stage's protective barriers at lightning speed. Most of the audience didn't really appreciate Soul Masters like Ling Luochen, as she would greatly affect the competition's visibility the moment she made a move. The ice mist swiftly blanketed the entire competition stage, making it so that nothing else could be seen on stage. Both Shrek Academy's team members and the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy's team members were as nervous as ever inside of their respective waiting areas. Victory was imperative to Shrek Academy in this round, as a loss would mean that their advantage would disappear. Even though they still had 2 powerful Soul Emperors, their opponent's team leader had yet to step out either. A minute passed, and then 2 minutes passed. Soon, 5 minutes had passed in the midst of everyone's agonizing anxiety. The ice mist covering the entire stage gradually dissipated. When everything that was on stage became visible, everybody could see that Meng Hongchen was still standing inside the icy prison. Her pale white skin seemed to be even more pale at this point, as it was covered in a layer of frost. Ling Luochen also remained in her original spot on the other side, as her ice staff was raised high above her head, while her entire body was covered in her ice armor. Was it over? Who'd won the round? The Heaven Fiend Doluo, Huang Jinshu, stood at the center of the stage, as he was the judge. A layer of starlight had condensed into a protective barrier that enveloped his body within it. It was obvious that he was rather fearful of the battle that had transpired before him. At that moment, piece after piece of thin ice drifted down from Meng Hongchen's body following a series of crisp crackling sounds, which shattered into dust as they fell to the ground. There was still a look of disdain paired with a faint smile on her face. Did you think that ice could block off my poison? It's a pity for you, as my martial soul is an ice-type one as well. Passing venom through ice is my forte, thus your loss is not unjustified. Blue light flashed through her right hand as she spoke, a blue longsword appearing in her hand. She slashed it in front of her body, and a chilly and sinister blue light flickered as she cut open the ice prison, which Ling Luochen no longer had control over. She then elegantly sauntered out from inside. The Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy is victorious. Shrek Academy, send forth your next contestant. The Heaven Fiend Doluo waved his arm in the air, and a sphere of light enveloped Ling Luochen, and sent her off the competition stage. Ling Luochen was like an ice statue. Hui Yuhao was the one who caught her yet again. He tapped her and instantly dispelled the ice armor that was enveloping her body. Ling Luochen had completely lost consciousness like Bei Bei before her, even the color of their faces was identical. Such powerful poison. Wang Yang was also overcome with a haze of terror. No matter how intelligent he was, and no matter how well he could arrange battle strategies, he was at his wits' end, and could only look on helplessly in the face of such a situation. Who would have thought that such a formidable poison soul master would emerge from their opponent's camp? Both Bei Bei and Ling Luochen had been defeated in battle without even having a chance to directly clash with their opponent. Hui Yuhao would be able to get rid of a pure ice poison. However, even though Meng Hongchen's dual-type venom origin was ice-based, it also contained traces of fire inside of it as well. The moment the outer layer of ice-type venom was removed, the fire-type poison inside was likely to be unleashed. One misstep could cost Ling Luochen her life. How could Hui Yuhao dare to take this risk next? Meng Hongchen's voice, akin to the harbinger of death, could be heard once more. Her expression was still condescending and extremely arrogant, but this single word caused an immense pressure to fall onto Team Shrek inside of the waiting area. She defeated 2 people in a row, both of which could be described as effortless victories. Meng Hongchen was the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy's cornerstone at this point, as both parties had now been pulled back onto the same footing in terms of able-bodied contestants. Dai Yueheng gradually rose to his feet, his brows furrowed. Wang Yang had explained the vermilion ice toad's situation to the best of his ability to the rest of Shrek's team, while Ling Luochen was battling with her opponent. The white tiger was ferocious enough, but it still belonged to the same category as Bei Bei's blue lightning tyrant dragon. Bei Bei hadn't been able to resist Meng Hongchen's poison. Would he be able to as a Soul Emperor? Dai Yueheng didn't know the answer to this question. Yet, even if he knew he wouldn't be able to resist it, how could he just chicken out? Both the Emperor and his own father, the White Tiger Duke, were watching. The despondence and exasperation that Dai Yueheng felt in his heart was already at the highest possible level, causing veins to pop out all over his forehead. He'd rather challenge a soul sage than fight someone like Meng Hongchen. It wouldn't be much if he won, but it would be an embarrassment if he lost, and he'd be humiliated in front of the vast audience. The list was fixed and couldn't be changed, however, so he could only gather his courage and prepare to engage in battle. Dai Yueheng. A deep voice rang out from beside his ear. Dai Yueheng turned around. Ma Xiaodao was the one who'd just called his name. Ma Xiaodao had completely suppressed the evil fire in her body during their period of adjustment and recovery before this, and she'd even regained much of her soul power through a milk bottle. Ma Xiaodao gazed at him, and a serious look flashed across her eyes. She lowered her voice and said, "Her venom is powerful, but she's ultimately still a level below us. Your 3 powerful transformations that are meant to amplify your powers will grant you a great boost to your resistance. Rain hell upon her in the time that she tries to take you down with poison." All of them were intelligent. This single pointer was enough. Dai Yueheng immediately understood the meaning in her words, and his eyes squinted a little as he nodded his head. He gave Ma Xiaodao a thumbs up, then leapt into the sky and landed on the competition stage. As the onlooker, he could see more of the game, and immediately understood what he had to do with Ma Xiaotao's timely reminder. He possessed a powerful martial soul, and was a soul emperor over rank 60. The amplifications that his martial soul could apply onto his body were extremely formidable. Under such circumstances, a certain duration of time was needed for poison to take effect on his body no matter how acute his opponent's venom was. Bei Bei's level of cultivation was inferior to his opponent, plus he'd been caught off guard. As for Ling Luochen, their round had only concluded 10 minutes, after her ice mist had permeated throughout the entire competition stage. Meng Hongchen had mentioned afterwards that ice was ineffective in blocking her from spreading poison, but it was clear that she'd needed a certain amount of time to deal with Ling Luochen. Ling Luochen was a control-type soul master, and thus was more adept at controlling the battle rather than using brute force. He, on the other hand, was different. Meng Hongchen looked back over her shoulder at her own camp's waiting area, as Dai Yueheng stepped onto the competition stage. The Sun Moon Empire's teacher-in-charge made a few gestures towards her, and Meng Hongchen rolled her eyes, then she nodded her head slightly to show that she understood. An added tinge of self-confidence instantly appeared in her eyes. "Step back," the Heaven Fiend Doluo habitually said. Dai Yueheng squinted slightly as he stared at Meng Hongchen with a chilly gaze. Meng Hongchen felt her body tighten up and a chill ran down her spine. She felt as if she was actually facing off against a ferocious tiger. He was a Soul Emperor from Shrek Academy, and his intimidating aura was cause her stomach to freeze. She quickly recovered, however, as her 2 previous victories had built up her confidence. Dai Yueheng's disposition seemed to change delicately when he reached his corner. He didn't move very fast, but the distance between every step that he took was extremely balanced and even. His aura kept becoming denser and more stable, as if he were a mountain that was gradually taking shape. On top of the royal city wall, the Star Luo Emperor grinned and said, "My friend, do you think that Dai Yueheng will be able to defeat the Sun Moon Empire's rare poison soul master?" The White Tiger Duke frowned faintly and replied, "He can win if he plays it smart. However, he will still probably end up hurting himself even if he does emerge victorious, as poison soul masters are troublesome, especially those from the Sun Moon Empire." Your Majesty, you need to start taking that girl seriously. Indeed, the Sun Moon Empire is getting more out of control. The messenger that I sent to Shrek Academy returned yesterday. Oh? What did Shrek Academy say? It was apparent that the White Tiger Duke knew about the Star Luo Empire's efforts to form a rapport with Shrek Academy. The Star Luo Emperor laughed and replied, "What else? Those cunning foxes. They politely declined my offer." The Martial Soul Department's Dean, Yang Xiaozhe, sent a message: Shrek will never fall in. They will only nurture, and they will only protect. Shrek's influence will never leave Shrek City. The White Tiger Duke grunted and said, "They've already become the Continental Guardians, yet they're still not coming out of the city. They are just not going to expand outwards." Dai Yueheng roared like a tiger as soon as the judge gave the green light, and his entire body shot forward like an arrow. His first, third and fifth soul ring immediately began to sparkle sequentially as he flew through the air, and he transformed as fast as he could. Golden fur and golden claws appeared as he used the White Tiger's shield, the White Tiger's Vajra transformation, and the White Tiger's Devil God transformation. These three powerful amplification skills could raise his power to the highest possible level in a matter of seconds. He'd already reached the center of competition's stage by the time his third soul ring had been completely released, and it was obvious how frighteningly quick his movements were. It felt as if his fearsome aura was going to tear everything before him to pieces. Below the competition stage, Ma Rulong's expression changed again and again. He was also a Soul Emperor, but the rift between him and Dai Yueheng was simply too vast in terms of their martial soul and cultivation. He only had a 50% chance of defeating Dai Yueheng at best, even if he unleashed his soul tools with all his might. He had to admit that Shrek was superior in single combat, at the same age, and the same level of cultivation. He knew that he wouldn't even have a 30% chance of victory if he were to go up against Ma Xiaodao in a 1-versus-1 matchup. Meng Hongchen finally released her soul tools as she faced off against Dai Yueheng. An icy blue radiance glowed from 13 spots on her body. These 13 spots were her forehead, shoulders, chest, elbows, abdomen, hips, knees, and both of her hands. 13 spheres of chilly blue light formed from, then swiftly transformed into an exquisite blue armor that protected Meng Hongchen's body. Even though her armor covered her entire body, there didn't appear to be any redundancies in it. The entire set of armor seemed extremely delicate and fine, and was even engraved with magnificent bluish gold floral patterns. Meng Hongchen was already enchanting, but this body armor made her appear even more valiant and formidable. She also held a pair of icy blue longswords in both of her hands. The swords were thin, and were each 3 feet long. 3 pairs of folded wings that were roughly a foot long extended from behind her body. The body armor in and of itself was enough for her to release a dense, chilly aura. He Kaitu's ability to distinguish soul tools was relatively advanced, thus he immediately gave his opinion. This was a Class 6 soul tool, a full body armor with attached weapons and a flying type soul tool. Furthermore, a Class 5 soul engineer would be able to use this Class 6 soul tool. He was also positive that Meng Hongchen couldn't possibly have made this. This soul tool had definitely come from the hands of some expert. How old was Meng Hongchen? The fact that she was already a Soul King was extraordinary. There was no need to ask to know how much importance the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy placed on her. It was almost impossible for her to have reached her current level of cultivation all by herself, and she'd also had to train in soul engineering at the same time. Hui Yuhao possessed twin martial souls, and the Ice Empress, Skydream Iceworm, and Electrolux all lived in his body simultaneously. Yet, even with all of these factors, even he wasn't confident that he'd be able to reach rank 50 and be a Class 5 soul engineer by the age of 15. There was no question that both Meng Hongchen and Xiao Hongchen had had a lot of man-made factors involved in their growth. There was no use telling others what exotic treasures or herbs they'd ingested, but the sheer level of their cultivations also implied that their foundations weren't stable. Rank 30, rank 60, rank 70, and rank 90 were the 4 important milestones that Soul Masters faced. Meng Hongchen and Xiao Hongchen would experience a decline in their cultivation speed if their foundations weren't solid enough. They would have to stabilize and consolidate their foundations over a sufficient period of time if they wanted to achieve real success in the future. This was the reason why it was so apparent that Meng Hongchen hadn't been the one to forge and produce the Class 6 soul armor that she was currently wearing. This didn't mean that she couldn't display formidable prowess using this soul tool. Instead, She was using her own aptitude and abilities to show Shrek what the future development of Soul Masters on the continent was likely to be. Meng Hongchen's speed increased exponentially as her figure flashed once. She didn't intend to clash directly with Dai Yueheng. Rather, the thin swords she was holding cut through the air as she stepped to the side. Two streaks of icy blue light appeared in mid-air like two bolts of lightning and formed something like a cross, then soared towards Dai Yueheng. They didn't appear as if they would dissipate either. It was as if they were part of a soul skill. Dai Yueheng didn't even attempt to dodge, as he was aware that he didn't have much time. He swung his tiger-like left hand and unleashed his soul power, causing 5 beams of golden light to collide with the center of the cross. His forward momentum remained unchanged and unaffected as he did so. Dai Yueheng held his breath, but he still felt his entire body turning cold. It was as if something was invading his body with unstoppable force. He concentrated his soul power and relied on his body's powerful resistance to disregard this feeling as he continued his forward lunge towards Meng Hongchen. Meng Hongchen's first soul ring had been sparkling ever since she'd made her first strike, which represented her vermilion clear ice toad's acute poison. At this moment, her second and third soul rings lit up one after the other. An icy blue light ring extended out from beneath her feet and covered the entire competition stage in a matter of seconds. This was her second soul skill, Ice Venom Ring. She'd taken advantage of the cover provided by Ling Luoquan's ice mist previously to use the ice venom ring to amplify her first soul skill and eventually defeat Ling Luoquan inside of her own ice mist. When her third soul ring lit up, something strange began to happen. A mirror-like solid piece of ice that was about 5 meters in diameter appeared beneath her feet. This ice block projected her reflection, but the scene that appeared was extremely peculiar. Dai Yueheng arrived in front of her just as she finished unleashing these 2 soul skills. He shot out the White Tiger's fierce light wave at her as soon as possible. The White Tiger's fierce light wave was extremely formidable under the amplifying effects of his 3 transformation skills. A beam of white light as thick as an arm tore through the air, booming and crackling with energy. If this beam of light hit its target directly, its power wasn't inferior in the least to that of a Class 5 energy-gathering soul cannon. A sinister scene appeared at that moment. 2 Meng Hongquans suddenly appeared on the surface of the ice block. The streak of white light flashed by, and the Meng Hongquan that it was targeting simply dissipated like a shadow, while the original Meng Hongquan relocated to another position. Not only had she managed to evade the White Tiger's fierce light wave, but she'd also managed to relocate to a position behind Dai Yueheng. Her thin swords sparkled and transformed into sword shadows that pervaded the skies, before they stabbed right towards Dai Yueheng. Her sword's foot-long radiances became concentrated, causing the air around them to release chirping sounds. This was Meng Hongquan's third soul skill, Ice Reflection. It allowed her to switch positions with the light images of herself that were reflected on the surface of the block of ice that she'd released. Even though it wasn't as powerful as instant teleportation, it was an extremely practical soul skill that worked well in combination with her soul armor. Who was Dai Yueheng? He was the White Tiger's heir, and a soul emperor, who'd stepped out from Shrek's inner courtyard. He could be counted as a veteran of countless battles. He was not in the least bit worried or frightened despite his opponent's unique soul skills. He immediately swept his tiger-like palms out behind him the moment that his left leg landed on the ground. The sharp talons on his tiger-like palms blazed with large patches of golden light when they clashed directly with the thin swords coming toward him. The thin swords in Meng Hongquan's hands were Class 6 soul tools. Their offensive power was just as strong as Dai Yueheng's tiger claws. She relied on her soul tool's power to forcefully bridge the gap between their levels of cultivation. Dai Yueheng had severely wounded Xiao Hongquan before this, thus it was natural for Meng Hongquan to feel an acute sense of belligerence when she unleashed her full power. However, he was still a soul emperor after all. Dai Yueheng would be able to overcome Meng Hongquan in terms of strength, soul power, and martial ability if he didn't have worry about the effects of her venom. Even though a Class 6 soul tool was powerful, Meng Hongquan still wasn't a Class 6 soul engineer, thus she was only able to temporarily maintain this balance. When Dai Yueheng took the opportunity to spin around and face her directly, she started to crumble under the pressure. Meng Hongquan's figure flashed once more, as she used her ice reflection to relocate herself again. Her thin swords slashed through the air, their shadows permeating through the entire arena, as she relentlessly tried to find any weaknesses or loopholes in Dai Yueheng's defense. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.